health services in a way that we can be providing the right policies at a federal level as well as the right administration to get the federal funding out as quickly as possible. So streamlining it and making sure that at the end user, the consumers are receiving better care and more integrated care.
Very exciting and a positive effort here.
I appreciate you ending on a positive.
You got to work on the fun stuff and then the tough stuff. And, you know, I'll save my comments for the close here after we hear from the public testimony. Let's hear from the public testimony, and as the first witnesses are coming up, I want to welcome Chris Burns' parents, Don and Mary Lou, who are here from Danville watching their son in action. Please stand. There you are. Welcome. You should be proud of your son. He does a very good job. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, members of the committee. Carolyn Jenna with the California Medical Association, here to enthusiastically support and urge the committee to confirm Mr. Douglas's position as Director of the Department of Health Care Services. Given the breadth of things, Medi-Cal in particular, and of course so many other programs that the department does run, we don't, of course, always see eye to eye with the administration, but of course we are guaranteed with the complexity of that there will be some combativeness, but what we aren't guaranteed is camaraderie. But with Mr. Douglas, we do have that. He is an absolutely consummate professional, is always accessible to us, is always willing to hear our opinions and take our input on issues. Obviously, the operation of the Medi-Cal program, drug Medi-Cal, all of the other things that fall under the responsibility of the department are huge issues for us, and we do appreciate having that opportunity to have that taken into account. We heard another one come up just today in Senator Harman's questions with regard to medical necessity. Huge, huge issue from the physician's perspective, and we absolutely look forward to being a part of that stakeholder process as well. But thank you so much, Toby, for everything you do and for your willingness to always be there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Landsberg.
Mr. Pro Tem and members, Elizabeth Landsberg with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. So as a consumer advocate, we of course very much care about how the Medi-Cal program treats real people. It's an incredibly important program serving 7 million, and Mr. Douglas is incredibly knowledgeable. He has to know everything from healthcare delivery systems to financing to how Washington, D.C. works and waiver negotiations and how eligibility works. And we have found Mr. Douglas friendly and approachable, incredibly knowledgeable, and does a great job overseeing the department. So we're here in support of his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Landsberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Kathy Sunderling McDonald for the County Welfare Directors Association. We're also proud to support Mr. Douglas's confirmation today. County Human Services manage the eligibility for those 7 million Medi-Cal recipients, and we take the job very seriously, but it's one that we could not do without a strong partnership with the state. So that is a vital component of our relationship. Mr. Douglas has expressed the same sentiment in person to my members at our Board of Directors meetings, and they very much appreciated that. We'll certainly hold them to it. And as just one example, one brief example, we also really very much appreciate his support and the administration's support for a new direction for the automation for our eligibility operations. It's a vital tool that our workers need to do their jobs. CWDA is working with state staff, including staff of Mr. Douglas's, to quickly move along the planning for this, and so because we support that vision as well. For these reasons, we're pleased to support his confirmation today.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ann McLeod, California Hospital Association. And out of respect for the committee, I'll pare it down to 2 sentences, but if I could go on for a very long time in support of Mr. Douglas. I thought you might catch that.
Just kidding.
With Mr. Douglas's expertise and leadership, he has successfully secured federal approvals for the state's Medi-Cal Section 1115 waiver and the hospital quality assurance fee programs that have brought billions of dollars of new federal funding to California while creating innovative solutions for the state's healthcare delivery and financing system for California's most vulnerable population. On behalf of more than 400 public and private hospitals and health systems in California, CHA is pleased to support Mr. Douglas's confirmation as Director of Department of Healthcare Services. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, welcome.
Yes. Senator Steinberg and members of the Rules Committee, Cindy Enos, currently California Children's Hospital Association CEO and former director of the Department of Managed Health Care. It was important for me to appear here today, not just to echo CAHA's endorsement and everyone else's endorsement, but to speak personally about Mr. Douglas from my experience as a fellow director and now as a stakeholder who seeks his advice and counsel on issues. And I wanted to speak to his tremendous courtesy and respect that he shows stakeholders and that he showed me as a fellow director, and it didn't change one iota when I assumed my current position. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to talk about the difficulty of being a director in this particular budget climate and the very, very difficult decisions that a director, and in particular this director, is being handed, and how difficult that is and how difficult it is to lead a team, and a team like Toby's of very, very dedicated people who depend on their director for their morale and support. And so Toby's leadership isn't just external, it's very much internal as well. And for those reasons, I wanted very much to endorse Toby's candidacy.
Thank you for coming to the committee. We appreciate it.
Hi, Erin Auber-Givens. On behalf of the Children's Specialty Care Coalition, we represent pediatric subspecialists that are based at the pediatric regional tertiary centers throughout the state. The majority of the children our physicians see do depend on Medi-Cal, Healthy Families, and the CCS program, which is housed within the Department of Healthcare Services. We've worked with Toby over the years on many issues and appreciate his candor, his accessibility, and his trustworthiness in his role. And we look forward to working with him as we look at new ways of providing more efficient care through medical homes for children with serious and chronic health conditions, and then also looking forward into health care reform. So we're here in strong support.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Tim Shannon, representing the Children's Specialty Care Coalition and also the California Orthopedic Association, agree with all the remarks that have been made by the supporters. I just want to say, like the last witness, we've met with Mr. Douglas many times, and I think what particularly impresses me is not only his candor and intelligence, but he doesn't just hear what you're saying, he actually listens, and that is a very important quality, and we strongly urge his confirmation.
Thank you.
Senator Steinberg and members, Terry Cowger-Hill on behalf of Cowger and Associates. My nonprofit clients in the healthcare arena have had the opportunity to work with Mr. Douglas, particularly when he started at Medi-Cal and now as his new role in the department as the director. The Children's Hospital of Oakland, My Hemophilia Council of California, as well as the Children's Hospice and Palliative Care Coalition. And in particular, we worked with Toby on the rollout of the CCS palliative care pilots. That was a bill that passed in 2006 overwhelmingly with Republican and Democratic support in the California legislature, and under your leadership and direction, that pilot has rolled out. It's slow, but we're deliberately slow in rolling that out because these are very, very ill children, many of them facing terminal illnesses. And so we want to do it very carefully and thoughtfully, and under your leadership we are doing that. And I want to commend you for your willingness to work with the advocacy groups. You've done a great job, and we look forward to working with you in the future and support his nomination.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Carmela Castellano-Garcia, President and CEO of the California Primary Care Association, representing the community clinics and health centers of California. We serve 4.7 million patients throughout the state and over 2 million of the Medi-Cal patients, so there are many issues that we have had the opportunity to address with Mr. Douglas over quite a number of years. And I can say one of the things that we have been so pleased with that my members say is the access has been incredible on a quarterly basis. He meets with our leadership, and that's been extremely valuable. He's been personally involved for years. An important aspect of that is that he really endeavors to understand what the impact is of the policies on my constituency, and that's been very important to our membership. And finally, and what we find most valuable is Mr. Douglas practices collaborative problem solving. He is a problem solver and will sit there and roll up his sleeves and help to try to find solutions to very difficult problems. So we fully endorse his position. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sherry Fields with LA Care Health Plan. In addition, John Ramey, the CEO of Local Health Plans of California, the 12 community-based managed care plans in California, had to step out for another meeting and asked me also to lend his support. I'll just echo the thoughts of everything that's been said here, and would just add that over the past few years that I've known Toby, he's been mostly dealing with program changes due to cuts as a result of the state budget. But Toby never loses sight that these are real cuts that impact real people, and he does always consistently has done a very thorough stakeholder process. I've been known to be sneaky and try his cell phone at 7 o'clock at night when I think he won't look at the number, and he takes our calls all the time, and he's very accessible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trent Smith on behalf of our county organized health system clients, also Medi-Cal managed care clients who've worked a lot with Toby in the past and hopefully will in the future. And again, echoing that he's obviously very intelligent and very accessible, and our clients really enjoy working with him, and we fully endorse his confirmation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Steve Cruz on behalf of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors and their public health officials who have a long history and productive working relationship with Mr. Douglas. We have a great deal of confidence in his leadership skills and his policy expertise and all the other fine comments that were made by the witnesses, and so we strongly endorse his appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access California. Like our friends at the California Medical Association, we find that we, from time to time, disagree with the proposals that Mr. Douglas puts forward, but we do also find him very accessible and recognize the difficult budget situation in which the state finds itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in opposition to the nominee? If not, Senator Harman has a question. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the opposition. Please, I apologize. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Jill Youngling, and I'm representing today adult day health care participants, and I'm one of those noisy people that come and talk to you all in your office. I've known Toby for several years, have worked across the table from him in trying to resolve issues with adult day health and changes that would make the program better through the years. And there has been past history of stakeholder involvement. I've attended all the stakeholder meetings that were set up by the Department of Health Care Services for the transition plan, and clearly we don't agree, and I don't believe we don't agree because of our self-interest. We don't agree because the transition plan is problematic. We do appreciate that you've put that together, and we're hopeful that there will be an extension as was discussed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie Toth, and I am the administrator of 2 adult day health care programs, nonprofit programs in Contra Costa County. And, you know, I had happy years working with Toby for a number of years when he really was involved in the stakeholder process with adult day health care. And this is so difficult for me because I don't know if it's my opposition to Toby, it's my opposition to the position, it's my opposition to the way in which he's being dictated to do things. I don't know. I'm a lay person. I'm sorry. I serve elders and people with disabilities. I'm not a government employee, and I don't get this, period. I can tell you that the involvement of the stakeholders in this process has been absolutely minimal. You can have a beautiful transition plan with managed care organizations ready to pick up every single one of the 34 to 37,000 people, but if they don't provide the services, there's no possibility that that plan is going to prevent the institutionalization. So I don't know that it's about Toby. I know that it's about this process, and that Toby says that he's about the stakeholder process. He says that he's about eliminating the fraud, waste, and abuse, yet given the opportunity, the Department of Health Care Services did not get rid of fraud and abuse. The Department of Health Care Services fined rather than prosecuted people who were in violation of the way that things should be. Okay. And so those are my oppositions, and again, I want to state I don't know that it's Toby. I don't know that it's somebody else telling Toby, you've got to do this, because in the past, Toby has worked with us. Thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate your testimony and your advocacy. You know, thank goodness there are people like you and others who keep all of our feet to the fire here on behalf of people who really need the help. Senator Harman has a question, and then I want to respond in my closing, if you will, as to why I support Toby. I'd like to respond to some of your questions, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to revisit this issue of the medical necessity and the definition business, and you talked about the establishment of the task force. What I'd like to know, is there a deadline when that decision will be made? And I'd encourage you to do it as quickly as possible, because it could literally put some small rural hospitals and providers out of business if they don't get guidance of what they can do and what they can't do. Can you give me some commitment of when the deadline will be?
I can get back. I don't have it today, but I can get back to you. As I mentioned, we cannot. It has not been implemented yet, so there's nothing implemented yet until federal approval, and that has not occurred yet. And we need to also make system changes within our claims processing system. But what I can get back to, I can get back to you.
You just send an email to my office. You can get it from my staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Alquist has a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that as chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Aging and Long-Term Care, that I look forward to working closely with you on this ADHC transition to see that our elderly don't fall through the cracks. And I know that you're good to work with. I would also say I noticed a couple of people came up who, like us, are very unhappy about what is going to happen with ADHC, but you didn't set the policy on this. We needed to save taxpayer dollars and in a very bad economy, and this is what we had to do. So we want to work with you to see that it is done in the best way possible, and I think that is possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alquist, and thank you, Mr. Douglas. You sort of led into exactly where I wanted to go in an answer to the witness's question, really. It's important that folks watching this from the outside or even the inside understand this process a little bit and how it works and how it relates here to Mr. Douglas. We sat up here for the last hour and a half, asking some very hard and tough questions. And that is our job. Mr. Douglas did not create this situation. He does not legislate, and he's not the governor. He's charged with responding to the laws that we pass. Now, I don't want to relitigate the history of how we got here with ADHD. There has been some differences between the legislative branch of government and the executive branch of government. But we have to separate some things. We make the law, the governor signs or vetoes a law, the governor has a blue pencil. The other thing that's important is that to recognize, and I think you sort of recognized it in your testimony, and I want to say it here very publicly, thank God that Toby Douglas is willing to do this job. It's a hard job. We relate, and we believe, I certainly believe you are not only eminently qualified to do this job, we need you. And yet we're going to continue to be aggressive in our questioning in the public forums and in private settings, et cetera, and you'll push back on us, and back and forth we will go on behalf of the people that you are serving and that we're all serving. So sometimes people can misread it like, geez, why are they being so tough on him? Because that's our job, and there's a lot at stake for real people. I proudly support your nomination, and thank you for your public service. Please make a motion. Moved by Senator Alquist.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? Aye. DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harman? Aye. Harman, aye. Steinberg? Aye. Steinberg, aye.
5-0.
Thank you very much.
Come back anytime. Congratulations. And thank you to your family as well. Appreciate it. Okay, we now move to Genevieve Sharoma.
Do you want to make that announcement?
Oh, I'm going to make, come on up, Ms. Sharoma. I want to make one announcement in terms of the remainder of the agenda, and that is Madeline J. Glickfield is a member of the Water Quality Control Board, Los Angeles region, has been put over until next week. So that will not be, that nomination will not be part of the agenda today. Ms. Sharoma, welcome to you. Please introduce your family, friends, and brief opening statement, and then we'll get into some questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start by introducing a few coworkers from the ALRB, and I have several family members with me as well. So with me today is my colleague on the board, Catherine Rivera Hernandez. I also have Antonio Barbosa, our executive secretary, Terry Robinson, my board counsel, Edward Blanco from the general counsel's office. With my family, I have my husband with me today, Michael Abbott.
Nice to see you, Michael.
And my father, David Takeo Sharoma. My father is a retired farm worker. He is also part of that greatest generation. He gets embarrassed when I brag about him, but he was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1945 into what was then the Military Intelligence Service, the MIS. He ended up serving in post-war Tokyo for a couple of years, and I'm just busting with pride to have him as my father.
Mr. Sharoma, welcome to you and to your entire family.
So good afternoon, Chairman Steinberg and members of the Rules Committee. I am deeply honored to appear before you today for consideration for confirmation to the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. My commitment to public service is rooted in my humble beginnings as a farm worker daughter who was given the opportunity to work hard, thrive, go to college, and succeed. And as my resume indicates, I began as an engineer in 1978 with the California Air Resources Board. There, I came to appreciate how laws passed by the legislature and signed by the governor are implemented to effectuate their purpose for the people of California. And these past 12 years, I have been very privileged to serve on the board of the ALRB and implement the landmark California Agricultural Labor Relations Act, which establishes collective bargaining for farm workers. During my time on the board, I have carefully deliberated on each case that came before me, applying the law to the facts at hand. In addition to my board duties, I initiated the implementation of an electronic case tracking system to assist the board in tracking the status of cases, making resource and budgetary decisions to increase the organizational efficiency and comply with informational requests. And as with many general fund agencies, and we certainly heard the experience of several candidates prior to my hearing, the general fund agencies certainly are thin on resources and staffing, but even with those challenges, I supported staff participation in job fairs, farm worker breakfasts, seminars, meetings to provide information to interested parties. We have brochures in English and Spanish for both farm workers and employers. We have a public service announcement in Spanish that has been distributed to radio stations as a PSA with our 800 number. We established a memorandum of understanding with the National Labor Relations Board for assistance in staffing large elections, and efforts continue through the General Counsel's office to work with other state labor-related agencies to cross-train staff and share resources. Over the years, I've attended agricultural economic seminars and conferences, hosted and participated in educational conferences at the 25 and 30-year anniversaries of the Act, conducted roundtable discussions with stakeholders, visited many, many harvesting operations across the state, and each time came away with an appreciation for the magnificence of the California land and people. I grew up in the northern San Joaquin Valley in Acampo, 3 miles north of Lodi. We had the view of the snow-capped Sierra to the east, Mount Diablo to the west, and the mighty Highway 99 connecting us to the big wide world. Growing up in the country, any of us who grew up in the country, having that Highway 99 right there connected us to that big wide world. I could not have imagined at that time I would have the privilege to serve on this board, to serve the people in the state of California. I am humbled and honored at the prospect of continuing on the board. I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Shroma. Let's go around the horn. Senator Alquist.
Thank you. A pleasure to see you again. Thank you. A couple questions. The first one is, well, in your letter to Rules Committee, you said that the two greatest challenges facing the board are insufficient staffing and inadequate outreach to the farm worker community. So both of my questions address that. At your current staffing levels, how is the board meeting its legally prescribed duties in effectively administering the ALRA, the Agricultural Labor Relations Act? And also, with limited resources, how do you get the word out, not only that the board exists, but also how it functions and what its duties are?
So there are two parts in my answer to your question. Insofar as for the board itself that I sit on, we have sufficient resources here in Sacramento in terms of being able to deliberate on cases that come before us. I have my attorney, I have staffing, I have the case law and what have you there to access. The conundrum, the dilemma is for our regional staff as far as it is their day-to-day duty to not only investigate unfair labor practice charges, but also we do charge them with getting that word out. It has been very tough. With a 37.5-person organization for the entire state of California, 81,000 farms, 800,000 farm workers at peak, it is tough, and we are concerned that, in fact, many farm workers and supervisors, farmers do not know that we exist. So what we are doing is, again, that PSA on the radio pays huge dividends in terms of getting the word out, because farm workers do listen to the bilingual radio. Our employees out in the region, under the General Counsel's purview, they do attend farm worker fairs, farm worker breakfasts. They do go to the labor camps. When the season starts, they go to labor camps to tell folks that the ALRB does exist. Also, they are working with sister agencies towards cross-training, and I'm going to highlight right now that there is something, in anticipation of whether you would like to hear some more about this detail, there is something called the Labor Forum that has just been initiated by our staff that includes the EDD, the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, UC Davis, Cal OSHA, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, the Department of Labor, and what they are doing is meeting once a month to compare the experience in the field towards training the trader as far as understanding each jurisdiction. Everyone has a lot of work to do, but in doing that, then that also helps the other agencies to recognize when they need to refer a farm worker to the ALRB.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Fuller.
Given the farm worker protection and workplace enforcement are also handled by the federal government and other state agencies, has the RLB done a review of what few differences remain so that you can focus on the areas that maybe aren't being covered as much? I mean, you have limited resources now, and I see that there's been vacancies also on the board. And so is that a way that helps, and have you done anything about that?
As in terms of the relationship, again, with the other agencies, we are very, very clear about our unique jurisdiction, and that being whether it is to run farm worker elections, which is a very distinct and unique area of the law, or whether you have 2 farm workers or more who come forward and say that they have suffered retaliation. For example, we are the only law that effectuates thusly. If 2 farm workers go to their supervisor and say they would like to have higher wages, the supervisor, the employer, the farmer, can say no. What the supervisor farmer cannot do is then fire the farm workers for having asked. That is the unique law that we implement, and that is the retaliation that we protect against. We definitely work to assure that we are not overlapping, if anything, with the other agencies, to see if to really help them understand this very unique law, that as they are out there dealing with farm workers on wage violations or safety or what have you, that they are able to do referrals for us. And in fact, we do have experience with the EDD in such fashion, and also, in fact, in the San Joaquin Valley, this has been working very well.
And I also saw that the caseload has really dramatically decreased for the election certification. In 76, it was about 422, and evidently in between 2005 and 10, it was 7 average. So has there been a rise in retaliation cases, or has the total overall caseload reduced as well?
The overall caseload has reduced. The act and the activities of today are definitely far different from the early the 1975 era and those early days where there were several hundred elections held. Really, on average, the workload that you see is pretty much average of what we see on a yearly basis. I think that it's ebb and flow. We are almost like a firefighting unit insofar as we are there if organizing activity occurs, and if an election qualifies, we are there to run it. If it's a large election, we partner up with the national staff who help us out during that time. As far as seeing greater levels of unfair labor practice charges, what have you, and from the General Counsel's office, again, it is pretty steady. From year to year, there may be some shifts. Hence, that's why our staffing is less than it was back in those 1970 days. Thank you.
Senator Harmon.
Thank you. Just briefly, I noticed or been advised that the business of the board or the caseload has decreased dramatically from when the board was first created some 36 years ago in 1975. And in fact, during the past decade, last 10 years, there's only been 3 members on the board rather than the authorized 5. And so the question occurs to me, well, and also with the federal involvement, do we really need this board anymore? Is this a candidate for merger into some other area that could work? You have a $5 million a year budget, 36 employees. This might be something that might be painful to you, but is it something that we as legislators should consider?
Vice Chairman Harmon, that's a very pertinent question. My answer is that, frankly, if you, the legislature, with the governor, decides that something should be done differently, I abide by that. Because, again, I know you have tough questions in front of you. Having said that, I think that the LRB has definitely served a purpose, even as there is less activity, even as we have 3 board members versus 5. I mean, I think that makes sense in terms of the workload. The LRB has achieved that peace in the fields. Even as stakeholders will argue about what it means, what it doesn't mean. When I first got on the board, there had been an election where there had been violence. Since then, I am very pleased to say we have not had that level of violence, and we have had a very orderly process available. And so for the legislature.
I would agree with that analysis, which kind of brings me to the reason for the question, that maybe you've done such a good job that we should think about moving on.
I defer. Honestly, I mean, as much as I love my job and I love the agency and I love the act, and I defend it, in the end, it is up to the legislature and the governor.
Well, I want to pick up on that just a little bit because, of course, there is I think, significant policy differences, if you will, even within the legislature about what the source of the decreased caseload is. Maybe everything is all well with farm workers and their treatment, and maybe over the years in different administrations and lower funding, that the act has been implemented in such a way and interpreted in such a way that no one wants to go there anymore because they may not feel they get their fair shake. Now, I think this board is a different board. It also begs a question whether policy question, whether just the environment out there for organizing on behalf of farm workers, whether it's even possible given farm labor contracting and the way the whole system is set up. So I might read the fact that the caseload is less differently than my colleagues, but we're not necessarily to debate that today. I do, though, want to ask you some questions about the nature of the caseload that you have, to understand sort of the import of the issues that you're being asked to decide. How many of the cases that the board deals with actual election misconduct?
Oh, yes, we have had a number of cases, but I did allude to one of them in my letter to the committee, where when an election is being conducted, and in fact there is misconduct, it can have a very chilling effect, which can affect the outcome of the election. Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm going to. And how many cases of election misconduct have you dealt with as a board member during your tenure, approximately? I'm not looking for...
Oh, gosh. I'm thinking I have... I don't have a number count for you. I can certainly get that for you, Senator
Is it a dozen? Is it 15?
I would say in terms of election misconduct, but out of almost 100-plus decisions... probably a good dozen or more.
Good dozen or more?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of those dozen deal with a request of either the union or the employer, because it can go both ways, to set aside an election because of misconduct either by the employer or the employee?
Oh, that is the ask.
That is the ask. That's the import.
Right.
Okay.
And for both certifications and decertifications.
And how many times has the board set aside an election because of misconduct either way?
Numerous times.
Numerous times.
Yes.
And this is just in terms of the way you view your authority and the way the facts come before the board. I'm just curious. When the board does make a decision setting aside an election because of misconduct, in your experience, can the board determine at that time they make the decision whether a subsequent election could in fact be held in a way that was fair to both parties? Or is that hard to know at the time you're setting aside the election because of misconduct?
No, this is something that both the staffing in the region and at the board are pretty keenly aware. And in the agricultural setting, it is very hard to rerun an election or to call for a new election, because both the migratory nature of the work and also the cases that do come before my board end up being pretty tough pretty tough ones, where the actions are clear. And I do want to say that I have no doubt that the majority of the farmers out there are abiding by the rules, the law, what have you. But by the time they come before my board, there are some pretty tough situations that farm workers encounter as they're trying to organize.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Senator De Leon, I know we can come back to you. That's all right. Witnesses in support of the nominee. Witnesses in opposition to the nominee. Witnesses with firm neutrality. Let me, another point of personal privilege, seems the last several weeks, people I've had the pleasure of knowing for and working with for a long time have been before the committee. And I've had the privilege of working with Genevieve Sharoma in the Sacramento community for most of my years of public service, and this is a fine, fair, smart public servant who does really anything she's asked in terms of volunteering or helping out with a myriad of good causes. And she also has the judicial temperament in the way she goes about her business. She has her strong opinions. But she is also just very fair to everybody who she deals with in life, and I know before the board, and I'm very proud to support your nomination. Motion? Moved? Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. De Leon? De Leon, aye. Fuller? Fuller, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
It's 5-0, which is very,
Thank you.
that says a lot here too. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. And last but not least is someone we know well, Michael N. Valines, who is up for confirmation as a member of the Central Valley Flood Control Board. Assembly Member Valines, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you, too. Please, I know I had the privilege of meeting your father earlier, if you want to introduce him and anybody else.
Dad, you want to say hi? There's only like 4 of us left, so he's a diehard. He's not World War II generation. He's the Korea generation.
Korean generation.
17, but,
well, thank you, too, for your service, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Mike, welcome. Call you by your first name, probably shouldn't in this setting, but we know you well, and glad you're here. Tell us about why you want to serve as a member, continue to serve as a member of this board.
Well, first of all, it's great to see everybody. Thanks for having me here, and I appreciate the opportunity even to be here for confirmation, so I appreciate it. And I did want to just again thank my dad for being here. He and I started, when I first ran for office as a protest candidate a long time ago, he and I would drive around everywhere, so I thought it was fitting that and one of my last sort of acts in government would be hopefully a confirmation he'd come up and be here again. So it's great to see him here. He wasn't able to come up much in my years in the Assembly because my mom was ill. So, Dad, it's great to have you here, and I appreciate it. I enjoy thoroughly serving on the board. I think it's an important board. Many of us, all of us, I think, voted on the 1E, the Bond Act that talked about levies and voted on things that changed the board into a full-time position. And it's a critical board. What it deals with is important. It's levees, it's floodway protection, it's things that are important to all of us and critical in the Central Valley. Honestly, I'm very grateful I have a chance to work on policy and to be a part of that. You don't always get that on the outside, and so it's a great board that I'm a part of. I'm learning a lot. I'm the newest member, so I try to listen to a lot of wisdom. But I'll tell you, I've enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot. Going through this process, I hadn't been through a confirmation process before. I was able to meet with staff before, and then I'll meet with Senator Alquist and try to put calls on everybody. I apologize. I may not have gotten everybody, although I did get a call in. But I wanted to say in that process, a few things came up I thought I'd answer real quick and then go to your questions. The board is focused on being independent, making sure that we get the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan done that will come from DWR. We're also very focused on public safety, which is a critical issue in these. And we're working on a list in terms of public safety and disaster preparedness. I found out a lot of information the last day to make sure that we have that we're working to cite critical levees, the ones that need to be fixed first, and then to go forward. We also have a big role in environmental issues in terms of the board, and I enjoy working on that too. There are many cases where we can have win-wins with protection and the environment. So it's a great board. I think it's a needed board. I hope to keep serving on it, and I hope to make sure that we keep Californians safe and keep the policy moving forward that this legislature sets.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me ask the first question, if I might, because I know that the statutory duty of the board, among other duties, is to deliver a draft. The Department of Water Resources, is statutorily mandated to deliver a draft Central Valley flood control plan to the board by January of 2012. And then the board is planning to adopt the plan by July 1. It's July 1, 2012. I'd like to hear your assessment of progress and whether or not there are bottlenecks, if you will, that we should know about funding-wise, process-wise, permitting-wise, because obviously when we passed this legislation, I think back in 2008, we set tight timelines because you never know what the next winter is going to bring. So tell us what your view of the status of the projects and what we can do, if anything, to make things go faster.
Sure. As a quick source of background on that, the board will actually, like you said, review the plan that gets done by January 1 from the Department of Water Resources. We have that 6-month period to do 2 public meetings, review the plan, make sure that the public gets a chance to respond to it and sort of be that focal point for our citizens. And then we would adopt the plan by July 1st. That's mandated in the law. I believe we will meet the deadlines. We have regular updates every board meeting. We'll have another one this Friday from the Department of Water Resources, which is doing a good job and is working hard on the document. I think people would always love to have more staff, but I've seen very clearly, and I've heard it all day today as well from you and from other individuals up here, people realize that we're in a time of downsizing. There isn't more money for things like that. But I've been very pleased with the progress from DWR that we see and believe that the plan will be done and that we will adopt and it will have the things in there that we're mandated to have.
Good. I had almost the exact same question. The Pro Tem had to step out for a moment. So let me ask my fellow committee members if there are questions. Senator Alquist, did you have questions for
Sure, thank you. I have
Mr. Valines?
A couple questions. One in the area of disaster, well, I'll just mention both here. In the letter you wrote to us, you said that the board takes seismic safety risks to the system very seriously and that the board has hired licensed geotechnical engineers. So my first question really is, and it's more than just a yes or no, but what value or how do you place value on seismic safety when considering levee improvements and permitting requests, and how has the board used the geotechnical engineers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate a chance to get more information for you, too. I mean, first, even in the law, part of CEQA, we're supposed to be very clear about seismic issues and addressing those. The board, and we have limited funds like everybody else, but we went ahead and made sure that we did have a seismic engineer. We coordinate with DWR's seismic engineers, and we're coordinating with the federal government's, the Corps' seismic engineers, on all projects. And we believe that seismic safety is one of the most important issues, especially for ones that we're going to be fixing quickly or anything that would be new work. We're also working on new standards with the federal government and ourselves to make sure that we're pushing that along. So there's a very distinct focus on seismic safety and making sure that we're evaluating that and then working with our local partners on that. The individual who does that work for us on staff reviews all projects that go through and then any permits that come through as a part of the staff report we get before every board meeting.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Senator Fuller, any questions?
Well, your experience with water actually precedes mine, and I really have all the faith in the world that you will do the best for the area. But that one question that I haven't ever asked you, I've asked you all the technical water questions that ever could be asked, and I appreciate the expertise you've given me, is, in this role, what unique thing is it that you feel that you can help this board come to? Because I think sometimes there's a breakdown between what we start out to send the message to bureaucracies and then the final implementation.
Well, I think you sort of touched on it. There's a couple of things. I think one thing is I do believe that my experience in the legislature is very helpful. It's a public position, but I do think that understanding when we all were there late at night voting on these bond issues and watched what happened in Katrina and understood, literally where we're sitting here today, which regularly flooded, in the old state capitol, how important that was as a public safety issue, and that many of us willing to do a vote that was a tough one to put a lot of money towards fixing these, that needs to be moving along. And I think that I offer a perspective of what the legislature is looking for in terms of meeting deadlines, what's included. And I've been able to be helpful with that. But then I would also say on the flip side is that I've learned a lot from people that are pushing this through and watching the staff go. And I've been very pleased. I just have to be honest. People are working very diligently to getting to deadlines. I knew, as Vice Chair of Water Parks and Wildlife, and you were being nice, you did more work with water. It had more success than I did. But it's confusing in itself, all the different groups out there, but there's a lot going on to protect the Delta, levees, public safety, environment, and we all have to coordinate. And I find that there's a sense of doing that very well. So I think my perspective of what the legislature wants and would demand, if we don't do certain things, we're going to be in big trouble. So I'm able to push on that. And I also think the part about making sure that we offer the public their chance to come up, to give their testimony, to talk about a permit they're looking for, is really important, and you learn that in this setting or in other committees, and I think I'm helpful on that too to people that come up. Thanks.
Senator DeLeon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Assemblymember Valines, it's my understanding in your meeting with the rules staff that you indicated that you don't believe in public education, baseball, or puppies. I don't know if that, if there's any veracity to those rumors, but if you feel free to clarify.
It was only one of those, and that slipped out. And I'm allergic to dogs, so I'm just kidding. I'm not. No, I don't remember any of those coming up, but thank you very much for the question.
I'll say this. We had an opportunity to serve with each other back in the Assembly Chamber, and it was always a very respectful dynamic that you and I had as members of the Assembly, and although from different political parties, I would always characterize our conversations and our negotiations as always above board and very respectful. So I just want to convey to you that I'll be supporting obviously your request for your nomination on the Central Valley Flood Protection Board.
Thanks.
Very good. I'm sorry I was out of the room. I know.
Yeah, sure. Everyone has had an opportunity to say something except myself, so if you'll grant me that privilege. I don't have any questions, but I do think that Assemblyman Valines is eminently qualified for this position, and thank you for agreeing to do it. It's probably a lot of work, and you may have something else you'd rather be doing. But thank you for your public service, Mike, both past and present, and we know you'll do a good job in the future. So thank you for your help.
Thank you. And I feel lucky to do it, so I appreciate it.
Witnesses in support. Dad? Witnesses in opposition. Mike, I know that you are widely respected, and that certainly includes me. We always talk about it. We fight in a very, very difficult period in California's history, we fought like we should fight, and in the end, we came together. And I know that was not easy for you, not easy for anybody, but I just think you're a man of very high character, and glad that there's a way for you to continue your public service.
Thank you.
So there we go. I think that's an endorsement. But, okay. There's a motion by Senator Ahlquist. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Fuller, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
It's 5-0. That'll go to the floor. Okay? Great. Thank you very much. All right. We now have number one. Senator Harmon, you had some issues on the reference of bills.
I did.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
very much. We only have one bill that is before the committee for reference. It's Assembly Bill 506. I am told by my staff that this bill has not been processed by a policy committee, and I think that it should be, as trying to perhaps circumvent the rules a little bit and go directly to appropriations. And my request would be that we send this bill back to Governance and Finance. I think they're the ones that wanted to hear it. I think Senator Wolk did correct me if I'm misstating myself, but I believe she was one that said if there were amendments, she would like to have the bill come back. And I think that, so that's kind of, I wanted to think or suggest that's what we should do with
I
this
appreciate it. The bill was, in fact, heard in the policy committee. There has been some work on it, but the bill has been heard by the policy committee, and this does involve the potential of bankruptcy and a myriad of fiscal issues as well. And so happy to make the motion. Happy for you to make that motion. I won't support it. I want to urge my colleagues to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be my motion. Thank you.
Good. May I make a substitute motion, or would you?
That's okay.
Substitute motion to take the recommendation to move the bill to the Appropriations Committee. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? DeLeon? No. DeLeon, no.
No. It's a substitute motion. That's okay. The chair is asking for an aye vote, please.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Harmon? Fuller, no. Fuller,
Harmon,
no. Harmon, no.
Steinberg,
aye.
We got it straight. Okay. Motion passes. Okay. Thank you. Let's. So now we've got. So that's number one. Now let me make sure I have all this straight. We want to have. If you recall that 4X is put over until next week, and then as I understand it, there's been a request to separate items 4. S, U, W, and BB.
That's correct.
Okay, so Senator Alquist will move those 4. Please call the roll on those 4.
Senators Alquist?
Excuse me, Senator Harmon, did you want those separate within the separation?
On item 4BB, if I could just. Yes. Item 4BB, if I could just make a brief statement on this. This particular slot on this Water Quality Control Board is designated for someone in the Fish, Recreation, and Wildlife slot. This individual, Mr. Young, I am told, is in the water quality business. There is a water quality slot on this committee, and I think that he should be in the water quality slot, not in the recreation fishing slot. It's just it doesn't make any sense to put him in that slot.
He's a she. I just
excuse me. I beg your pardon.
That's okay.
Correct. I had written some notes over it, and I couldn't see the spelling on her first name.
That's okay. That's okay.
So I just bring that. I would vote no on her for that reason, and then we should wait for someone to be appointed that is properly qualified for the slot of fishing, recreation, and wildlife slot, because that's the kind of person that's supposed to be in that slot, not someone from water quality. I would support this individual if he were in the water quality slot, but he's not. So that's my thinking behind it. I would urge a no vote.
Okay. So the 4 have been moved together. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller?
No.
Fuller, no. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
So 3-2 vote. Okay, so now we go through the remainder of 4. We have 5. The only change I have with the rest of the agenda is under item 8. It's apparently a request from Senator Kehoe to introduce and allow Mimi Morris to say a few words during session as opposed to presenting a resolution. So if you're all okay with that.
5 and 6.
Oh, and you want to do 5 and 6 separately?
Yes, I
didn't
do,
get that.
please.
Can we do them together or separate?
They should, I believe, be done separately.
Okay, so let's take now item 5. Ms. Senator De Leon moves. Please call the roll on.
If I could.
Of course. Yes.
As relates to both 5 and 6, the argument or the purpose of my statement is the same as it relates to both of them, is that this is somewhat violates the policy and procedure of this type of situation, particularly as it relates to AB 1422, which I understand is strictly an intent bill. The language in the bill is intent only. It's, and here they're asking for a rule waiver on an intent bill. I think that from a policy standpoint and I think from a procedure standpoint, we should not be authorizing these types of rule waivers. So I would urge a no vote on both 5 and 6.
But you want to do them so?
Well, we can do them together.
Okay. So 5 and 6 together, moved by Senator De Leon. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. De Leon? De Leon, aye. Fuller?
No.
Fuller, no. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That's 3-2. Okay, so now, with the exception of the slight change to the Senator Kehoe piece on item 8, which I just mentioned,
yes.
The rest of the items then are 4, G through R, T, V, Y, Z, and AA. Items 7 through 15. And the walk-on item, all before us.
Yes, I'd move approval.
Moved by Senator Harmon. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. De Leon? De Leon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Very good. Those measures pass. We now have an executive session, if we may, and we'll be done in a moment. Anybody who, we're just going to be literally 2 minutes, so.